I was born and brought up in Quincy, Massachusetts, trained at the local hospital, also graduated from the local high school, and out of a class of 480, I was number 10. I'm the oldest of 5 girls in the family. And when we were growing up, we could go out and play out in the yard, out in the streets, walk down to the beach, and never have to worry about being accosted. We played a lot of buck, how many fingers have I got up, which was a game that we all loved, and playing marbles. I don't even know whether kids know what a marble is today, but we played marbles. And then I skated in the rear of the middle school, but I was always so cold I would run home and put my feet in my mother's oven. She had an old black oven, and I had a sister who would stay down on that pond forever, but little old me had to get back and get my feet warm. We had a very simple life. We didn't do a lot of traveling because my dad was a bus driver, and the big thing that we would do would be to take a drive on Sunday morning and go up and visit the Blue Hills. And the Blue Hills is a very beautiful area back home, and that's where we went. It was nothing like it is with the kids today, you know, going all the traveling and everything. I never did travel. I think the farthest I ever went was New York. But I do have something to say about that. My dad, as I said, was a bus driver, so he could not do any drinking. Well, evidently I had an uncle who came to visit, and my dad imbibed a little bit. And when he got up in the morning, he said, "Where's Betty?" And she said, "Well, you told her to drive her uncle back to New York." At that time, it probably took about 4 hours to drive, and I had just got my license. I was 16 years old, and I had to follow a yellow line all the way. But Dad couldn't believe that he sent me to take my uncle back to New York. My dad had an old Ford, and that's the one that we used to drive through the Blue Hills. And I also trained at the hospital not far from where I lived, and I used to drive that little old flivver up over the hill. And then after I got through training, I joined the Army, and they sent me down to Texas, which was just about the worst place they could send me. Number one, I was so lonesome that whenever I hear a train going by now, I still think of when I was in Texas in the Army. I was only in for 1 year when I met my husband, and at that time you couldn't marry and stay in the Army. So I came home with Sheila, my daughter, from Texas, and she was 3 months old. Oh, my kids. Well, Sheila was number 1, and that's Kimberly's mother, and she was born in Texas. And so she's a Texas girl. Brought her back when she was 3 months old. And then I have 2 boys, John and Stephen, and then I have another daughter, my baby, which she hates for me to refer to her as the baby. And Sheila, her sister, always says, "Oh yeah, the baby." And I said, well, someday you'll feel like that too, the baby. And John had to go into the service. He was in Vietnam. And I used to one of his favorites is banana bread. And I used to bake him banana bread all the time and send it over to Vietnam, and it always got there. And when the rest of the guys, they'd say, "Oh, McDevitt's got a package," and the banana bread was in there. Sent him a Christmas tree at one time, and then he told me he didn't have any sheets, so I sent him sheets. And I don't know whether he ever used them or not. And then when he came home, he went to East Coast Aerotech and as a mechanic, which really helped him because when he was over in Vietnam, he was spared going into the front lines because he repaired the helicopters. My son Stephen was an all-star football player, baseball player, basketball player. He made quite a name for himself at the high school. And of course, I never thought that Stephen could do anything wrong until one time the policeman brought him home, and evidently maybe he had a couple of drinks, but I knew the cops from the emergency room because I worked at the local hospital and I was in the emergency room. So they brought him home to me, and then I went and got his car. Denise, she was rather unexpected. I mean, I thought I wasn't going to have any more kids, but Denise came along, and then she was a bathing suit designer, and she went up to Idaho, and they've been in Idaho ever since. And Denise, believe it or not, is in training to be a nurse. She went in when she was 56 years old, and basically I think she always wanted to be a nurse, but I never really prompted her a lot to go. I said, if you really want to be a nurse, I'm not going to tell you whether you should go or you shouldn't go. So she didn't. She went to Stevens College in Missouri, and she hated bridal work, so somehow she got on to bathing suit designing, and she did that and did very well. She used to have bathing suits in the Sports Illustrated. Very talented girl. And then she decided that she wanted to be a nurse, so she'll be graduating with my granddaughter at the same time. And then, as I say, Sheila, she was the oldest, and she went to Emmanuel and she met my great son-in-law. He was attending MIT, and he used to come out every Sunday and have dinner, and one day he said, I don't think I should be bothering your mother like that every Sunday. Well, the two boys had a fit. They said, we want Neil at the house all the time. And then they married, and they went to Detroit, I think it was. And then from there, they went to California. And that's when Sheila called me one time, and I said, oh, am I going to be a grandmother? And she said, no, you're coming out to California. So, but it was, by the time I went home, she said to me, I've got something to tell you, Mom. And she said, I'm going to go to the doctor. She said, I think I'm pregnant. And so that was the beginning of that. My son, John, married at age 57. And he had had a lot of girlfriends and everything, but this one was the one. And she had been married before, has got 2 girls, and her husband had passed away. And I always say he fell into a well and came up with a new suit, being with Mary Ann. She's a very lovely person. And then Stephen lives down in North Carolina, and Carol, they have a son, Brad, and then Brad has a wife, Felicity, and 2 children. So I am a great grandmother to 3 children. And I don't get to see any of them that often, but where I live back east, I just have to wait until I come out here. But it's always great to see those kids and their beautiful, beautiful children. And my oldest granddaughter She was back on the East Coast with me up until about a year ago. She was with Toyota. And then she told me, and it was on Mother's Day, that she was going to be going back to California. I said, oh no, to Idaho. I think she went back. And I said, oh, Chelsea, why are you leaving? So anyway, she left and my heart was broken. And then Connor and Chloe, my twin grandchildren. And I was out in Idaho when they were born, and I held them. And then I was with Chelsea, and she held them. And then she said, I've got to go and buy them a present. So we went shopping. And I think she was only about 5 years old. But she bought little hats and stuff like that for the twins. My bucket list. Well, let's see. So I want them to see Kimberly married. I want to see my grandchildren graduate. And then I'm seeing my daughter graduate from nursing school. But I'll still keep the one thing on my bucket list for Kimberly, to meet some great guy. Yeah.
Thanks, Grandma.
Yeah. She will.
What's something someone doesn't know about you?
Oh, yes. I had a boyfriend when I was just before I went into the service, and he was a fireman. And of course I went away, and he was really upset about that because I think he intended that we get married. And but he had a mother who was an absolute witch, and I don't think that I would be too happy. But anyway, he was in a grocery store, and he died. He had a massive heart attack. And he was the youngest fire lieutenant, yeah. Oh, I had another friend. He graduated from high school with me, and his wife, who had passed away, she was in my class also, and we were in training at the same time, and she passed away. So I had a couple of dates with him, but he was just an old fogey. He didn't want to do anything. So I said, this is not for me. So I started to refuse some of the dates because, you know, he was just, all I can say is an old fogarty. No fun. My advice to anyone, really, is to be kind and considerate. And with the kids the same way, be respectful of adults, your mother and dad, your brothers and sisters, and just make a lot of friends, because that is one reason why I think I have got to the age that I am, because I've got a wonderful family, got wonderful friends, and I think if you make friends and you're a nice person and, you know, really good to everybody, I think it helps along the way. One of my favorite things is sending cards, and they know it. I send a card to everybody that I possibly can, and I could spend hours in a card shop. And that's why, you know, they'll say, well, we'll take your grandma. Just let me go in there and take all the time in the world just to pick out what I want. And I don't care, it's the verse that is the best thing to me, what it says inside. I don't care what's on the outside, it's what is inside. No matter what, Christmas to me is the best part of the year. And, you know, they say, well, we'll pick a name and do that. I'll never do that. I'll always, I don't care. In fact, I had, I think, Bela, one of the great-granddaughters, I was supposed to just have her name for Christmas and just buy something for her. I said, well, I was going to buy something for Bela anyway. But I said, all the rest of them are going to have the same thing because Christmas is the best holiday for me, and I just love to buy presents. All I can say is, I wish that every mother could have the children that I did, or have, the grandchildren that I have, and the great-grandchildren that I have. And they are all so wonderful to me. It's unbelievable. I think there would be many people envious of the life that I have. I know a lot of grandmothers don't enjoy the love that I have from the whole family and from my own kids and everything. I'm so happy to see my family so devoted to their own family and to me. Not too many people have the friends and the love of family. In-laws included, they're all, the whole family. We're always happy together. I've never been one to hide my age because age is only a number. And fortunately, I've got a good number. God has given me good health and good friends, good family. And that's all that counts.